I got the knee pads on.
I do, yeah. Straight from the game.
Did you win?
No, we got smoked. It was so bad. Luckily, I'm not playing offensive line anymore, though, so that's a win for me.
Good. No, we got smoked. Yeah, but you're losing. You're all getting old now, and you're losing players to injury now. And
yeah, multiple.
Are you scared that you're next?
No, see, I'm feeling pretty good actually, because I'm like one of them that hasn't broke down yet. So
okay.
Between,
but
I feel like I've got a while yet. If I start to get hurt, I'm done so fast. I'm not gonna if I get hurt playing flag football, I'm gonna be done so fast.
All right, let's start the show. Ruff, he'll turn, give, Terry, busting into the open field, there he goes, Jaden Terry, Grandville with an answer, and another Bulldog win. Give the Scurry's fake, this in the backfield, evading a man, throws out of a tackle, incomplete. Zeros across the scoreboard. Harper Woods have won the state championship, their first in school history, in unbelievable, thrilling fashion. Fake handoff, guy up the middle, big hole, bursting over the 40 to the 45-50, angling right at the 40, 35-30, racing to the 25, 20, outside the numbers, 10, 5, touchdown, Muskegon, Mackay guy, 80 yards to the house. Dawg Pod, Episode 3, Week 3, coming off of Week 2. Nate Dreyer, Chandler Timmer, Michigan Game Night on Michigan Sports Radio, and all of the other ancillary brands that surround us nowadays that I can't even keep track of, and I'm supposedly in charge of keeping track of it. This week is Rockford Week. Everyone probably knows that. We also are really excited to have Grandville senior Emery Moody on the show. He'll be on here in just a second. We do not have a live broadcast. I mentioned a few weeks ago on our first podcast when I was getting at Chandler for making us have to record a day early for that pod that we're going to have to miss games later because of me. So that is now starting my fault. So no MGN broadcast this weekend. If anyone is in Nashville for the IndyCar Championship race, say hi, I'll be there. So for the probably none of our listeners that will be there, whatever. So say hi if you're there. I'll see you there. And I will be tuned in like you all should be Friday night if you're not at the game. MichiganSportsRadio.com. Brock Conkle, our Rockford crew, will have that game. We're going to have it anyway, so it does work out very well. The only difference is it won't be on our YouTube stream, which I know thousands of people have been tuned into. The first couple weeks there, we're really thankful. I mean, for 2 weeks, and one was a long road trip, but then even the Davison game, I mean, everyone can see the YouTube numbers, but that's honestly not even half or less than half a lot of times of the total numbers when we look at the back end of the MSR stream. And I mean, there are some other calculations that we do, and it's like north of 5,000 unique plus for first two week game. I can't even imagine where we're going to be in the playoffs. Like we are off to a really strong and exciting start. Part of why it's probably not good that some of us are making us not do a game this week, but off to a strong start, and we'll get into our kind of game of the week and other coverage coming up now as well. So really thankful to everyone that's tuned in. Let's keep this rolling. I think by the time we get to Ford Field, I'm thinking last year we were close to maybe the most listened to stream of those state championship games we're doing, and I'm hoping that we can have that sort of performance down the playoffs and the rest of this year. Again, like, subscribe, follow, whatever, on social media, at MI Game Night on X and Facebook. I'm just calling it X now, by the way.
Yeah, that's
it's pretty much just
officially
a point
taken
that
over.
It's worked, I think. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. MGN Shop. Shop there through MichiganGameNight.com. Click on Shop Merch, home of the original Grandville versus Everyone shirt. There may be some imposters out there, I learned, but make sure you get the original. I think there's a picture posted. Daniel Wiley has the original, so that was neat. And I know there's several others that are ordered, so we hope to see more of those out there. But the original Grandville versus Everyone shirt with our logo on it is available through that site. All right, we've got some games to talk about. One big one that's coming up, one that's just in our rear view, but everyone's here for Emery Moody anyway. So let's just go to him first. All right, welcome back, everyone, here to Game Night on Michigan Sports Radio, and really excited to welcome in our first of the Grandville captains this year to our Captain's Corner segment. It is Grandville senior defensive end, Emery Moody. Emery, how are you doing tonight? And welcome on to the show.
Doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's our absolute pleasure. I can tell everyone out here. I know you were kind of excited to do this because you were the first kid that came up to me at that scrimmage saying, "Hey, when are we going to do those Captain's Corner interviews?" So
yeah.
We're really excited to get to have you on the show, and we've been, of course, watching you now for a few varsity seasons here, coming back to your sophomore year. So far, your senior year, you guys, of course, have lost a couple of absolute heartbreakers to open this season, and I mean the fashion, the way you guys came charging back, and the way you lost them at the end. There is two of most kind of undeserved and probably most difficult losses I think I've seen a high school team take. I guess tell us about the start of the week here in practice, how the team's been able to refocus, the positives that you've been able to take out of the start, and how well you guys played two really elite teams.
They were really tough losses, but we were proud that we were down, a couple scores at halftime, but then found a way to get some stops, get some points back on the board, and so we're trying to build off those good plays we had, like in the third quarter, trying to figure out, what we did right in those moments and what we did wrong in the other moments so we can improve and be more consistent here on out. Rockford week, we're trying to just, hone in on the details, fix up all the little things because, it's all the details right now, and hopefully we get those cleaned up for this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's kind of focus on your side of the ball defensively. Especially that Davison game. You guys had given up, was it 4 straight scores, I think, at one point there in that first half. And then you come out end of the first half into that third quarter. You guys, string together 2-3 straight really good stops against that offense. So, what does that mean confidence-wise for the defense, especially when you count in these second half adjustments that you guys were able to make? Where's it at confidence-wise to look at a game like that and say, okay, we got off on the bad foot, but then Coach Zenner and this staff, they made great adjustments. We were able to respond to that as well, get the stops to help get the team back into things. It has to really be helpful confidence-wise alone, let alone schematically for the defense.
Well, yeah, those moments just show that, we know what we're capable of as a defense. It's just we got to work. We got to keep working to consistently be that team because, Coach Stiegel said it. If we can keep being that team we were in the third quarter last Friday, that'll win us a lot of games this season. So we're just trying to get us to that level consistently from here on out this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I just mentioned Coach Zenner as well, defensive coordinator Casey Zenner, who comes in this season. Tell us a little bit what it's like to play for him. A little bit different system, and obviously a really great guy. He's coaching. He's a little bit crazy in a good way when you're down there watching him. I guess just tell us a little bit what it's like to play for Coach Zenner.
Yeah, it's pretty intense working with him. He runs some pretty tough practices, but really detailed and planned out practices. He's a very smart coach. He knows how to get us all in the right spots, and he brings a lot of excitement and energy to the squad. And so we just gotta hone in and trust what he's teaching us because we've seen when we do everything the right way, the way him and the rest of the defensive staff have taught us, really good things happen. And yeah, we just gotta keep building off that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know for you personally as a player, obviously we've gotten to see over the last couple of years, you're a player that plays with a lot of that intensity and focus. And we've seen how much better you've gotten, especially kind of moving into this, top edge rusher role in the last couple of seasons. tell us coming into this year, now as we get into the early part of the season, what were some of the main individual focuses you had in terms of what you wanted to improve in your game, what you've been able to improve, what you still are maybe looking to improve after the first couple weeks?
I was just really looking to the season. I was looking to be more of a pure edge rush player. I feel like last year I was kind of limited in what I was doing. I just feel like there's just a couple things that I could have been better as a pass rusher. I feel like I really started to understand how to be a good run stopper last year, but then this year I was trying to open up my game, be a good edge rusher, be a good perimeter player. I've stepped into a couple of linebacker roles this season, so that's been fun. Being able to spread out and be able to make plays in space and all that. So that's just been stuff I've been trying to work on and have gotten better at this season.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's something, you point out moving into the linebacker roles too. We've seen you moved around a little bit, and back even going into the scrimmages. I mean, you played incredibly well there. I think you had a strip sack on Bryce Underwood at one point.
Yeah.
You've done really well throughout these first couple games as well. So I think it's that versatility that really has impressed us, and I think being able to show off that athleticism even more, and also I feel like you're a player that doesn't shy away, I should say, from the big matchups. I mean, how many times we were really watching that game against Davison and seeing where you were lining up in regards to where Ben Nichols, their 4-star, was, and so many times you're right over top of him. So I guess tell us about kind of your mindset in that too. When you go up against a player like a Ben Nichols, and you're going to see several good linemen this week as well against Rockford.
Yeah.
I feel like you're the kind of player that really enjoys and rises to the occasion in those moments.
When I go into big matchups like that, I try to find weaknesses. I try to find where my strengths could really exploit their weaknesses. So I watch linemen, players pretty closely. With tackles, I can see how they pass set, where they put their hands, and then I like to see with how the moves I've worked on over the off season, the moves I'm best at. I like to analyze and see what moves this week will work the best. Week one's the moves I was using the most weren't exactly the moves I was trying to work on Davison last week, and so that's just the week-to-week adjustment, trying to see where their weaknesses are, how I can exploit them, how I can beat them with speed, how I can beat them with power, just things like that really try and give me an edge on players I play this season.
Yeah, and I'm glad, I like getting inside the player's mindset and those things, and, talking about your versatility and so forth as well. And hopefully, if there's college coaches at the next level listening to this, they can kind of hear the intelligence that you certainly take in terms of your approach along the athleticism of the game. I guess we'll get to Rockford here in just a second. Let's maybe step ahead before we step back a little bit. The next level, college. I know you've got a couple offers sitting out there. Where are you kind of at right now in terms of that recruiting process, what you're maybe thinking about wanting to play at the next level, maybe what you want to study, and so on in terms of the next level?
I have one offer currently right now from a D3 Carthage University over in Wisconsin. I took a visit over there last summer. Great coaching staff. I love the area. But then I've also been talking to a couple GLIAC schools. Michigan Tech's been in the mix. Okay. Davenport's been in the mix. Ashland University a little bit. Just been talking to those coaches a lot. Hoping to see where my recruiting goes this year. And then I'm hoping to study business when I go to college next year.
That's awesome. Yeah, like I said, if nothing else, if we can take our somewhat small platform here to help kind of push some of you guys, because like I said, we know the intelligence, the athleticism, some of the things that you bring to the table, and certainly would love to get to see you play at the next level for any of those programs that you just talked about. Okay, here we go. Yeah. I don't know if do you know who you play this week? Has anyone mentioned that it might be kind of a big game?
Rockford.
Yeah, yep. Rockford. So let's kind of look at it 1,000-foot view here. Obviously, you don't need me to tell you that Rockford has without lack of a better term, kind of had the Bulldogs number. Going back to 2019, yep. You guys have not beaten that program. There have been some close ones. There have been, some tough games that got away or were tight in that time. I guess tell us a little bit about kind of what this game means. We know the rivalry, and the fact that you guys likely might see them again down the road. Tell us a little bit about Rockford, the rivalry, what it means to you guys, and what all the effort that's going into this week.
I mean, obviously, it's always been a big game for Rockford's really a big game in any sport for any athlete. It's been a game. The Rockford games are really games I've been looking forward to ever since I was a little kid watching Grandville football games. Mm-hmm. But especially with a little bit of our slow start to the season, we're really looking to try and get a W this week and get a jump back onto our season because it's our first conference matchup, and we're really trying to get a jump and get some momentum going into the rest of our season here.
Yeah, absolutely. And then kind of honing in for you again and what you're looking at. Like I mentioned a moment ago, this is a Rams team that has really a really big offensive line. They have a lot of weapons around, a pretty mobile quarterback in Braden Daniels, who's shown to be a little bit maybe more of a passer than a runner early this year, but still good athleticism. I think, therefore, your role, the other defensive linemen and guys coming off the edge, I think you're going to have a really important role in this to try to get pressure and try to speed up this Rockford attack. So tell us a little bit about, obviously you're not going to get into the specifics of the game plan, but tell us a little bit about some of the things that you're keying in on getting ready for this matchup where, like I said, you're going to have a really important role.
Honestly, just across the board, we're really trying to just hone in on the details. Mm-hmm. Rockford's a very, very well-coached and detailed team. They don't really make much mistakes. They play really well as a team. So we're really trying to hone in that our group collectively on defense has to work together as an 11-man unit. We can't have any one weakness on the defense. Like, we got to be an 11-man unit all working together. And so that's just going to be the key for us this week. Every individual doing their job and doing it at a high level and aggressive level so we can open up opportunities to get off the field and third and long and all that.
All right, yeah, absolutely. I can't wait. Unfortunately we'll be watching this weekend. I'll be quite a ways away, but certainly we'll be tuned into Michigan Sports Radio and rooting you guys on Friday night. Emery, thank you so much for your time this evening, and good luck the rest of the season.
You have a good one.
All right, you too. Thank you. Emery Moody, Grandville senior defensive end here on Game Night.
We are Centennial Securities,
an independent firm with a team of committed professionals
who strive to exceed our clients' expectations by giving outstanding service.
We're proud to be part of our community where we live and work.
Gear up this season with the MGN Shop, featuring everything from t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats and outerwear, to water bottles, stickers, and other accessories that help show off your style and your support of Game Night, the Grandville Bulldogs, and more. To shop, click on the Shop Merch tab at the top of MichiganGameNight.com and browse nearly 50 items. And be sure to check in frequently as new items are added throughout the season. That's the MGN Shop through MichiganGameNight.com.
Upgrade to Music Jams Premium to get uninterrupted listening on all your favorite tunes. Click here to start your 7-day free trial.
If it's important, it's not worth compromising. Which is why with Farmers, you don't have to compromise quality to get great savings on your insurance. I got this.
We are Farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Game Night is presented in part by Farmers Insurance, Bennett Center Agency, for all auto, home, specialty, life, and commercial insurance. See what a Sinner can do for you. All right, welcome back to Dawg Pod. Thanks again to Emery Moody. Great interview. Great to have him on. Nate Chandler. Chandler's going to actually talk this segment after I just rambled the first segment. He is here to say something. When we need smart things to be said, that's when we bring you in.
All right.
When it's time to get me out of trouble. Okay, so Grandville Davison. Where to begin? So it happened again. All of it.
Yep.
All of it. I said if you go to MichiganSportsRadio.com, I have my weekly 4 Downs column that I pen, and I penned in that column that among other things I christened Grandville, Michigan, Heartbreak City, USA, and I said in there, you and I have done, I think, well over 100 high school football games at this point in time, doing the math going back to high school. I did a couple more than you did in high school, but we're there. Considering the going down, the comeback, and then the loss inside the final 5 seconds twice, I don't know if I've seen 2 worse losses.
Yeah.
They might be 1 and 2. There's a couple others considering state championships, whatever.
Right.
But taking out the moment, and they're big games and the moment's big, but I don't know if I've ever seen 2 worse, especially considering the way the team fought back and they didn't deserve to lose because of that, and they were leading.
Yeah.
And then it happened twice in a row, and it happened to the same team.
Yeah.
Gosh, and like Emery said, I think the guys they've taken the positives out of it well, but oh my goodness, this poor team. Yeah. I mean, man, come on.
That's a tough way to start the year. I mean, just the back-to-back weeks like that. Yeah, I think there's some really good games we've got to call throughout the course of the years, and some really good Grandville games. Some the Bulldogs have won, some they've lost. But to start the first 2 weeks of the season like that, script going pretty much the exact same way against really talented teams when you factor far away on the road week 1 against another state title contender, this time in your home state and at the home field, and against another really quality team. And just to have 2 really difficult losses like that, I mean, we knew going into the season those first 3 weeks were going to be tough no matter what. And just to know that that's the result, because on one hand it hurts more because of how close they were. I mean, if it's a couple score games, it's those are really good opponents. Don't read into it too much. We'd still be saying probably the exact same things we're going to say about how the Bulldogs are still very much in it. They can make the playoffs. Their season is far from over. But instead, the fact that they were so close, had the game won with under 30 seconds both times, and then to have it ripped away right at the end like that twice is tough. And I think still a lot of positives though that this team, and I'm sure we've heard from players and coaches, and that's what's going around as well, that there's a lot of positives to take, and I don't think they're going to be too down on themselves, but just a really tough way regardless to start.
Yeah, 41-37, and this Davison game I think gives us more to take away, and honestly in some ways more positives to take away, just because it's a team that's a little bit more of a known entity. They also know how to stop the T. So if you're able to find points against them, you're able to find points against a team that knows how to stop the T and has multiple 300-pounders on their defensive line. You'll be able to do that against a lot of people. I think the one thing to it, though, is when you look at that script and where things for Rockford Week, which we'll, of course, talk a lot about, where things kind of come together, is the mistakes are very similar here week in, week out. A fumble in the first half, special teams mistakes in the first half. Now, in the second half, special teams nearly won the game both weeks, but special teams mistakes, allowing a kickoff return or a long, return in these 2 weeks. Defense with some kind of basic mistakes, giving up 3rd and 4th and longs in that first half that continued drives. So it's the same recipe that, again, Grandville's sitting there, and they didn't move the ball quite as well in the first half this week as last week, or last week as the week before. But what they did do is they set themselves up where it's, once again, you don't make these very small mistakes and these small details like Emery talked about, and you are right in it, and the game script doesn't get away from you. So that's, again, the problem, is it's small stuff. It's stuff that this team doesn't normally make the mistakes. They happen to make them 2 weeks in a row, but that's why they get behind, and then we'll talk about the clawback. But first off, it's it's interesting. It's the exact same script that put them behind.
Yeah, I think kind of an interesting spot there because on one hand, it's frustrating to see kind of some of those same mistakes back-to-back weeks when you kind of know after the first week against Pickerington North, the turnovers were some issues, the special teams were some issues, and I'm sure those are things that got addressed in practice that next week, and that was something that was focused on, like, hey, we gotta play clean in these areas of the game in order to win against high-level opponents, and so to see those kind of pop back up in week 2, sure, it can be frustrating, but at the same time, there's almost some consistency to it, to the point where, okay, now if we can get this figured out, we're figuring everything else out. The defense was getting some stops later on. When the offense holds on to the football, they're running over people. When the special teams isn't giving up long returns, they give their defense a chance to stay or to get off the field rather. And so I think the fact that they saw them back-to-back weeks, reiterates the fact that they need to be fixed going forward. But at the same time, now for sure, hey, if we clean these things up, we're going to be in a really good spot.
Yeah, and then let's look at the comeback. So how'd it happen? So you're sitting at 28-7, and it almost feels like a worse 3-score deficit than what it was the week before, because at that point, you've got the fumble mixed in. The only score came on a 65-yard run or whatever it was from Sadinsky, who, of course, was incredible. We'll talk about him more. But now you're sitting down. You've given up a couple bad scores. You turn it over. You had I believe a turnover on downs in your own end of the field. So the offense isn't moving, the defense isn't getting stops, and then suddenly, okay, get the ball back, go down, drive down. Zinsky scored before the half. Okay, get the ball to start the second half. Okay, bang, score again with Jaden with a longer run, or was that the shorter run? That was a longer run from Jaden. And then now all of a sudden it's defense gets a stop, score. Defense, and there's some 2-point conversions that get messed in. Defense gets a stop. Field goal, you're leading all of a sudden. So it's like it was all of a sudden like it couldn't have been any worse, and then nothing goes wrong for a quarter and a half stretch before you get to the wildness at the end of the game. So then again, and Emery kind of said this too, what Coach Stegel talked to the team is like they repeat that third quarter. They play both sides of the ball the way they did in the third quarter. They are going to win the state championship.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say. The problem is that's going to be difficult to replicate, but my goodness, that was so good on both ends of the ball.
Yeah, it was really good to see them kind of figure things out there on the fly and throughout the course of the game. And I think, both these first 2 weeks, we've kind of had a moment where, any team can win in any given week, and if things go 100% perfect, if the game starts off and crazy things happen, and you get a turnover, you get a big play, whatever, the crazy things happen. But at the same time, things got to go perfect, and for the Bulldogs, it hasn't been that at all. The first half's been pretty rough and on the whole, and so we've kind of both had moments in both of those games where we kind of look at each other and it's like, oh, it was a good run. Like, they had a chance, and it seems like in those exact moments that we've kind of looked at each other, it's been exactly when the Bulldogs have figured it out and turned it around.
Mm-hmm.
And so to see them in those tough moments like that, kind of fighting through some adversity against opponents that a lot of teams would probably roll over and the game's over and you got to blow it on our hands. The fact that they've been able to fight back and make it really close games and it hasn't been easy at all. I think the offense kind of staying true to themselves and being able to figure things out as far as they go with their playmakers and getting the guys involved, and in the first week more varying the formations. I think the offense looking really good. Of course, the defense finding a way to get off the field, getting some stops, forcing turnover on downs of their own, really big as well. And so it's been really impressive to see those changes being made and that momentum being switched in the middle of the game. And it just, now it makes you wonder, like, okay, if we put this together for a full 4-quarter game, if we can play that way in the first half, you've got a chance to start burying some teams, especially when you kind of get out of these first 3 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I mean, we know where this team can go. You're mentioning the way we were looking at each other and saying, like, I wish we had a booth cam week 1 where you were able to see our reactions, which was just utter shock most of the time while we're calling this. I wish you had a booth cam last week too, because I think the reactions were even more pronounced, because it was especially we don't want everyone to hear the off-air conversation sometimes, but we the behind the scenes stuff was just they're going down 3 scores, just all right, well, like you said, all right, well, I guess try again next week. It's Rockford, whatever, and then all of a sudden it's 1 score back, 2 scores back, 3 scores back, and it was increasingly less set off air. It was just a look at each other like, I can't believe they're doing this again.
Right.
Like I said, the open, all of it. It happened again, all of it to the very end. And let's talk about the very end. Let's talk about it here, kind of from the plays and from the perspective. Let's talk about how Davison. This is a good team. This team I was telling people about for the season. This is a dark horse. Are they a dark horse? Let's do this again.
Yeah, for the third straight time.
Dark horse championship team in the state, because I really liked what they brought back and some of what they had. And the way they bullied Rockford last year in the playoffs, too. We saw from them a drive in which they convert a 4th and 15 to like the game. Grandville about had the game won. They convert a 4th and 10, 4th and 15, whatever it was. Okay, go down, score. And then Grandville answers right back with Sadinsky going 65 yards, who made one of the best plays of his career. Maybe he should have taken a knee at the 20. Yeah. But like now you're down. I mean, obviously you score there,
right? And
now you're forcing Davison to a point where they hadn't been moving the ball well. Again, remember, they hadn't been moving the ball well in that second half.
No.
They had one score in that second half, and it came on a drive, like I said, they had to convert a 4th and 10 and multiple third downs. And then on that last drive, they had 5.5 minutes to go. And they took off, well, all but 5 seconds, and converted the ball, 4th down conversion in there, ran the ball, after they hadn't been able to run the ball, they bucked up, and they found a way to run the football. So all the credit, we talk about this from a perspective of how much of a heartbreaker is for Grandville, and for good reason. And it deserves to be so, but Davison went out and won that game too. And they were really impressive, and this is a team that's going to be, they need to be in a lot more people's discussions for, even with their week 1 loss, making a deep run and being a team that's going to beat all of these top-flight teams that people are talking about.
Yeah, no doubt. I think there's still a team that's kind of getting that chemistry built as well. I mean, but they've got a lot of that really high-end talent as well that we highlight on the broadcast. I mean, you've got tremendous offensive, defensive linemen, of course, A.J. Hill in the backfield, and really impressed by their quarterback as well, Jackson Dosh. I think he, down that last drive, the way he was able to kind of keep his composure and keep that drive going was impressive as well, and being a dual threat there and using his legs and his arm. But I think, that Davison team, I mean, it was fun to watch that chess match play out in live, especially in the second half, where you saw the Bulldogs defense kind of really turn up the pressure. They were bringing a lot of extra defenders on the blitz from the linebacker position, and they had Davison going backwards for a lot of that second half, where they were taking some losses in the backfield, couldn't get the running game going. Passing game that was kind of working in the first half wasn't really working. And it goes back to that screen pass, I think, on 4th down. That
went for 60 yards.
Yeah, I think both teams probably agree. The game wasn't completely decided there, but that flipped what the game was headed towards. I think if the Bulldogs defense gets off the field right there, you're looking at they're going up a couple scores, and I think Davison's kind of chasing the ghost the rest of the way. But credit them, as you said, the offensive coaching staff kind of knew that the adjustment the Bulldogs defense had made had the right play call against that pressure.
I've been told by the internet this past week that defenses and offenses can only know, or defenses especially, can only know how to stop a screen if they happen to have signals to plays that had never been actually run in a game, but that defense happened to have it.
Right.
There's a very small amount of the internet of Michigan fans that have been watching this BS going on. We're making an aside. We're not we don't have behind the call this week. Here's the deal. This is what this past year of this Michigan and whatever thing has exposed to me. There are two kinds of experts in football media. There is the expert that is the one that I think is on the bulk of these podcasts that are typically overplaying what went into stuff here, that are experts because they're really good at, they can just name a bunch of players. And because they can do that, they don't know a single thing about a single scheme. They couldn't tell you the difference of the way that Ole Miss runs an air raid but runs the ball versus the way that Mississippi State runs a veer and shoot right just down the road, and the difference in how they do that. They couldn't tell you any of it. They couldn't tell you why Chip Kelly is a difference maker, bringing in his spread option offense versus the multiple offense that they ran last year at Ohio State. They couldn't tell you any of that stuff. But they can name a whole bunch of players and whatever, so they're experts. So they'll sit here and tell you, this is what changed the game. And then guys that can tell you about X, Y, and Z are out there saying, probably didn't make as big of a difference. Other teams are doing this. They were probably inspired to do this by someone else, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's also true that's probably also true. Let's tie it back. West Michigan coverage.
Yes.
We pride ourselves on hopefully we were wrong a little bit on Davison. They ran a lot more 4-wide stuff than I was expecting. Maybe it's because we said it on here.
Yeah, you never know.
What were we talking about? We were talking about the game.
I think we're down to the final drive.
Yes. And then they scored on it. So then Grandville lost. Yeah, some players, though, that stood out. Like you said, Jackson Dosh, really impressed by him. What did he throw for?
350 plus, I believe.
350 plus, and he had to do a lot of it under duress.
Yeah.
Obviously, Easton Sadinsky, in a game that Davison focused in on Jaden Terry. Now, Jaden, in classic fashion, still scored 2 touchdowns in a game that he had 2 300-pounders keyed in on him. Yeah. But like Sadinsky, the passing game was there. The run, I think that was the best game we've seen out of Easton Sadinsky. Mm-hmm. If Grandville gets that more and more from him as a second option, plus Hardeman had some good runs, like that's where Grandville, of course, is dangerous.
Yeah, for sure. I think you kind of saw the Bulldogs figure it out as well as the game was going along. They're trying to get Tank the football a lot and have him break some big plays, and that Davison defense, rightfully so, was keying in on him, and they were going to make the Bulldogs beat them elsewhere. And I think you saw it partial way through that the Bulldogs realizing, yeah, we got another tremendous playmaker on the other side of the backfield there in Easton Sadinsky that I believe Coach Stiegel has said that if Tank wasn't in that backfield, he'd be the featured guy. He's a tremendous playmaker and one that would be the best running back on a lot of teams. Yep. And so when a team wants to take away Jaden Terry like what they did in the first half of that football game, they've got another guy that they can turn to, and he's not just a runner either. The fact that they get him involved in the passing game and you can see his hands, I mean, he's making some tough catches. Those weren't catches that he's wide open and the play action that fools the defense. I mean, these are contested catches. The one right over top of the defenders, a couple of other ones along the sideline. So I think
the one off the fumble where they just kind of played backyard football and someone still made it happen.
Yeah, no, it's really impressive to kind of see him really making some plays, and that's just a true threat for their backfield. And if they can get both of those guys, where you've got now 2 guys that can go opposite directions, can also be involved in the passing game, if you get numbers like that, going forward from the Bulldogs' backfield, they'll look out.
Him being injured and hobbled last year for the first Rockford matchup, I would still say hobbled for the second one. We saw it even with the great Hudsonville game he had. That burst was not there. That was a huge loss for that team. And the fact that he only has to play offense this year and he can focus on that and he can stay healthy is just huge. And it is such a factor that certainly is going to be brought to the table. All of it, though, it's 0-2. As we said in the broadcast, I'll say it time and time again, that's the best 0-2 team in the state of Michigan, considering everything. I think at this point in time, even considering Muskegon, who I think has some things to figure out, honestly, maybe more than Grandville does after the first couple weeks of the year. We're going to learn. There's going to be a common opponent that we're going to learn about more between the two of them in that regard, and let's talk about it, because if everyone was here mostly then just for Emery, the only other reason they'd be coming is because it is Rockford this week. They have a unique ability, Grandville does, to kind of undo the memory of the first 2 weeks in a lot of ways if they slay the dragon.
Yep.
That's how I'll lay it out there. We don't need to talk about what the record is, what has happened the last few years, how they've lost these games, the leads and the late losses and the games where they never were in it in some of the cases. And we don't have to talk about that, how good this Rockford team is, and maybe it's the best Rockford team they've seen in those years. All you can say is you can look at how well they played the last couple weeks. They're going to have to play them again later in the year, so you might as well take this as a good chance to try to slay the dragon right now.
Yeah, no doubt. I think a really big opportunity for everything that's gone wrong in the first 2 weeks of the season. If you beat your rival, get your first win of the season, if you win in any fashion, it's pretty easy to forget those first 2 weeks and say we've got all the momentum, all the energy we need to carry forward the final weeks of the season. So no doubt another big test, and one that's obviously had their number for a little while now, but also an opportunity to kind of forget everything else. And of course that doesn't come without the preparation and fixing the things that went wrong in the first couple weeks. But that opportunity is right there that, hey, if we clean these things up, get things figured out, it's nice to have another measuring stick type of game right there where you can kind of right all those wrongs.
Yeah, and it's one of those, okay, so we had our on-field intro. Last week we were talking about it's revenge on multiple fronts, and now it's revenge on 14 fronts. I think you got to be surprised that I actually posted that behind the scenes video, by the way, of that. Like, I was going through the photos trying to find the other video. It was mostly like a brag, like, oh, like, look at this cool on-field intro we're doing now. And I'm watching this, like, this is way funnier. And as you said to me, when I was saying, like, hey, I should send this, you said, hey, we don't even have to bleep anything on this.
Yeah.
Which is, for a stand-up intro and broadcasting in general, is, like, an off-air thing, is pretty rare. So, yeah, it was good. I had to get a haircut, though, because of watching it.
Okay.
So I got that.
I'm still going to petition to try to get like a hat that I can wear on field or something. Just maybe we can eliminate some of the wind issues.
Just for the intro, then?
Yeah, just for the intros.
Yeah, right. We'll talk. We'll negotiate that in your next contract.
All right.
So, yeah. Rockford. So, where should we start? Their defense is elite. It's always elite. Of course, this is one of their best. In particular, I think it's one of their best linebacking cores in the last couple of years. Sam Cummings, the coach's son.
Mm-hmm.
Cade Friesen, the next of the Friesens, is an edge and outside linebacker. A lot of depth, 120 players on this roster, I think, is the total number. A team that, with their depth, they're really good at scouting the T. We always like to talk about you can tell who's gonna be able to stop the T based on how well they run it in scout team.
Yep.
Some of these teams come out and they cannot run it in scout team. Some teams don't even try it pregame in scout team. Like they just don't even they just run inside zone out of their gun still. Like they don't even care. Rockford comes out and they run the T with their scout team as well as I think Grandville or Zeeland West runs the T. Like it's clean. So they know how to stop the T. They have great linebackers. They have a great depth of talent. That sounds like a combination that would lead you to believe that Grandville is going to have their toughest day so far on offense, and I believe that is true.
Yeah. No, I don't think there's any way to sugarcoat that as far as it's a team that's historically figured out the T as well as anyone in the state, and if they've got the playmakers that they supposedly do and the names that they do, it could be tough sledding. I think there's no way around that, but I think the Bulldogs, that's kind of where you start to see some of the adjustments that they've made early on in the year, where you see some of those different formations, you see some of the play action passes, and then you see just kind of lining your talent up against theirs, and also just kind of having to go head to head with it, and finding that right balance of we've got the playmakers, but we also need to be unpredictable at times, and that's kind of something I feel like the Bulldogs have been searching for the last couple of years, but there's no reason why this can't be the team that kind of puts it together.
Just in case they're watching, Rockford coaches, if you're tuning into this trying to gain some information on Grandville, I was at practice today. Believe it or not, they're running a 4-wide air raid spread the whole game. They're spreading around.
No huddle,
up-tempo, kind of like half-field read sort of stuff. So I would probably, whatever you normally run, I'd probably sit in a 3-3-5.
That's,
maybe in a 3-2-6. I would just sit back in it. I'd play 2 high safeties on every play, maybe even quarters coverage, just play way off.
Yeah.
That's all. I like to make sure the game are fair, so I want Rockford to know that's what Grandville's running. So be prepared for that.
Yep.
Have an extra defensive back or two ready to go.
Our insider report right there.
Yes. Don't. So I know Coach Vanderveen is known for putting like 10 guys in the box with the 1 high safety. Not going to work. No. They're going to throw over top. They're going 4 wide.
Never going to see it coming.
Well,
now maybe they will because we told them. But.
Yeah, right. So sorry about that. Get ready for the spread. It's coming. Other side of the ball. Where to start? So, for as good as obviously defense has been really good, and honestly, Muskegon, it was a 28-7 game. Muskegon scored a couple times late on the other side, and an onside kick too, which we can talk about Muskegon's new look offense. And for those of us that like running the football, maybe they should run the triple option still. But Braden Daniels is their first-year starting quarterback. Played a lot last year. He's played 2 great defenses. He's really well regarded. They really like him. They have new skill players everywhere. I think Isaac Poot, who is their great kick returner, did he have kick returning against Grandville, last year? He's, I believe, getting most of the snaps at running back. Some of their basketball stars, like Dylan Gross, Michael DeKuyper, are at wide receiver. I think They hit like 10 different targets or something. In that game last week, they have a college offensive line. I think it's the best that Rockford has had, at least in the Coach Cummings era. When those Michigan Sports Radio previews that we did, Rockford is the first team that we put together kind of as the concept. And I believe when Coach Cummings listed his 5 key players, I think he gave us Daniels and then 4 offensive linemen. So all of that is to say they've scored 20. They've played 2 very good defenses, but they've scored only 28 points those first 2 weeks. So this isn't so far one of those Rockford teams that was scoring 42, 49, 50-something points the first couple weeks like they have been. They're still figuring things out. So I think in that regard, I think what Grandville saw last week is going to provide a really good primer. Junior quarterback, experienced weapons, shifty running back, big offensive line, wants to be powerful. Grandville stopped the run well early in that as well. I think we saw a better primer week 2 than week 1 in what Grandville probably should be expecting this week.
Yeah, no, I think so. And I think, you kind of look at the schedule and you see the first couple teams in the non-conference that the Bulldogs are playing, and it's just it's so incredible the amount of talent. But I think when you start to realize what the Bulldogs have to do in order to beat Rockford, and that's kind of been the number one challenge for the Bulldogs coaching staff now, you start to understand, hey, if we're playing these incredibly talented teams week 1 and week 2, suddenly Rockford is still very much on par with those teams in terms of talent, if maybe not even better. I mean, that's to be determined. But
they might have less in the first 2 weeks. Like in terms of next level guy, in terms of depth of team, they're better than most.
That's just it, is if you're playing those first 2 teams where it's like so incredible over the top, suddenly Rockford doesn't stick out as much.
Right. No, I get what you're saying. This is bulletin board
it's a
material,
long.
it
is
what you're saying is true.
Yes, it's a long way around it here, but essentially the fact that if Rockford isn't far and away the best team on your schedule, and you've got these other really incredible teams that you're playing, and you're having to focus on, suddenly that game plan and everything that goes into that applies to the Rockford game as well. And I think maybe that's part of the approach to the Bulldogs, is that, hey, if this is just another game of similar game plan that we need to prepare for, maybe take some of that difficulty of what's been preparing for the Rams out of it.
No, that's a great point. Now, there is a little bit of a boogeyman
for sure
element to
sure.
this. And it's not necessarily a mental one because they've played them close so many times, but there is actually because they're so good at stopping the T, and the last couple of years have happened to have quarterbacks that do things that the Grandville defense struggled against quarterbacks that ran the ball the last couple of years. I don't know if they will quite as much this year. Dosh was effective last week, but he was mostly effective as a passer. They don't necessarily, like, Daniels is really good. He's not Zach Ahern athletically. So I will say, like, matchups wise, Rockford has just always been a bad matchup for Grandville. This is the best Rockford team there maybe has been in the last 3 or 4 years. Matchup wise, the matchup might not be quite as bad from that perspective. See how I'm tempering myself? Aren't I getting better, everyone? But I do think there is, like, just because they have they have a new quarterback too, they have got a bunch of new weapons and so forth, and like they haven't come out the first 2 weeks of the year lighting up 49 points per game. Like the matchup, playing them early in the season might even help a little bit. I don't know. I mean, it did help to play them in a monsoon like they did last year. But I don't know. It still is Rockford, and we'll be watching, and like, yeah. But I do feel like maybe I'll be completely wrong, and I'll own it then. But like, I feel like the matchup, even though I don't know how to say this. Even though this might be Rockford's best team we've seen, and maybe it's their best chance to win a state championship, it might open up a little bit of a possibility of the matchup might kind of be a little bit better for Grandville. It's kind of like how Michigan in like 2021, 2022, Ohio State was a better national championship team, but Michigan had a match. Like, there might be a little bit of that with the way Little had. I don't know. Am I crazy? But that's what it feels a little bit like.
No, I think we both kind of talked ourselves into that, if nothing else, of that the way that the Bulldogs have played the first couple weeks of the season, and the kind of the stuff that we've seen from them can translate to playing against this Rockford team enough that even though this is maybe Rockford's best team and there's a lot of hype around them for a very good reason, that whereas Rockford might have the wins against some of the top teams, maybe this Bulldogs team is kind of specially preparing and building to try to slow them down or at least keep it close. Where games have maybe got away from them in the past is they're kind of building to, you got to beat the team at the top in order to kind of take that next step, and I think that's kind of what the Bulldogs have been doing. And whereas Rockford's kind of been there, they've won the conference now, have made some playoff runs, and they're kind of been the team to beat.
I'll say it. Even though Grandville lost them just and Rockford won them by a score or two, I believe the team Grandville saw week 1 versus Rockford week 1, I believe the team Grandville saw was a better team top to bottom. I believe then week 2, I can't believe I say this, I think week 2 for sure. I think the team Grandville saw week 2 was better. I mean, Muskegon's going to do this again and prove us all wrong. Win the we're like we said, like we're going to be there doing the same game then versus De La Salle again the last week of the year. But like, I will say you have to keep him. People aren't giving credit, and I saw the pick'em and whatever. Like there were like a lot of Grandville picks on that, and it's like people were underrating what Davison is, and they did it last year. Like remember Davison kind of kicked Granville's butt last year, and people were like, "Oh, this is just on Grandville." And then Davison did the same thing to Rockford in the playoff. Everyone's baby. Yeah. And it's like, turns out they're pretty good. Turns out Nate and Chandler have been saying this since September, and they were right on this.
Yep.
Now, we're always wrong. Okay. Let's wrap it up. We're going to talk about the game script again to wrap it up. Because, again, and we talked about this earlier on in the Davison part of the segment, to me, it's going to come down to the way this game starts. Not fumbling, not making special teams mistakes, not doing anything else just dumb and out of character, for lack of a better term. Like, that's what's going to do. Honestly, this Grandville team, if they get the 2-score lead that they got last year in the playoff game, I think they win this game.
Yeah.
That's how I'll put it. Okay. Find a way to get that kind of start that you got in the playoffs last year. Control the game from the start, you win. I don't think Grandville can come back from 3 scores or 2 scores down against Rockford. They've done it the last 2 weeks, but just what Rockford knows on you, you can't do that. So nothing that happened in the first 2 quarters the last 2 weeks can happen. It's that simple.
That's basically what it boils down to. Is the comebacks have been fantastic and great, but you also can't keep relying on them, especially against this team, because it's going to be that much harder against them when they're that much more familiar with you. They kind of know everything about you. Coming back from 3 scores, not that it's impossible. If it happens, they're going to keep fighting, obviously.
They'll probably come back from 4 scores. Yeah, whatever.
All right, but no, it's going to be that much more difficult when it's this team that you're having to do that against, and so it becomes that much more critical that you can't have those early mistakes. You can't go 3 and out early on in the game. You can't fumble it in the red zone. Can't give up kick returns and expect that to not affect the outcome of the game. And so it's avoiding those situations where you find yourself in a deficit, kind of keep that game script neutral, and then that's where you've got the chance to make it a positive one for yourselves.
Absolutely. All right. It is Grandville Rockford, Michigan Sports Radio. Brock Conkle, the Rockford team, will have video coverage of that. I think they start 6:40 on Friday night. Remember, follow, like, subscribe across social media at MI Game Night. Shop the MGN shop. And we will be back next week. We'll have both podcasts next week because it is our first planned West Shore game of the week. The schedule is to go to West Otto versus East Kentwood. Have to do, or 99% of the way there, just have to get across the finish line in case the East Kentwood MSR team decides they want to do the game. Then we'll probably actually just do, I think it's Grandville Jenison. That way we'll probably just do that. Who knows where we'll wind up being. But stay tuned. But the plan is first West Shore game of the week is next week. So both podcasts back next week. Michigan Sports Radio with the live coverage. It's Grandville. It's Rockford's the rivalry. We might be deciding the OK Red on September 12 or 13 or whatever the game's going to be played on. He's Chandler Timmer. I'm Nate Dreyer. We'll see you all next week.